Hello everyone, I'm back with another tutorial, and today I'm going to be teaching how to build an obby. Now this is not my obby, but everyone loves obbies, everyone wants to build an obby, and it's a great beginner project that's pretty simple to build because a lot of it is just repetition. You just need to script a few parts and you can build something like this, and I'll show you how. Alright, so the first thing we're going to make is the block that kills you whenever you touch it. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a part, and I'm going to insert a script into that part. And the event that we want to use for this part is a touched event. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that up on the documentation now. So the touched event is actually part of the base part class, which is pretty much just the parent class for most of the parts you see in Roblox. So if you go down here to the touched event, this is just an event that fires when a part comes into contact with another part. And if you scroll down to the coding samples, we can see how it's used. So it looks like all we need to do is use the touched event on our killer block. So I have this part here, and I'm gonna color it red, and I'll name it killer block. And in our script, I'll create a variable called killer block as well. And I will point this variable to the killer block. So script.parent. And now we want to connect to the touched event for this block. So all we need to do is killer block dot touched. Fire when a part comes in contact with another part. And all we need to do is connect this, and we can connect it to a function, and it will actually pass in the part that touches it. So we'll pass in part. So you can see part.touch connect, and it passes in the other part that it connects to, or that touches it. So what we want to do now is make sure that whatever part is touching this killer block actually belongs to a character. And if we go ahead and go in and play, something that our character has that other models won't have is this humanoid attribute right here, this humanoid instance, which is included in every character model that spawns in. So to make sure that whatever part touches this killer block part is part of a character model, we can do local humanoid. I'm going to create a variable for humanoid, and all we need to do is do part dot parent, and we can do find first child, and this says that it returns the first child of the instance found with the given name, and we're going to pass in the name of humanoid. So whatever part touches this killer block, it's going to go to that part's parent, which in our case is going to be our character model, and it's going to find the first child instance named humanoid. And if that humanoid exists, if it does find an instance with the name humanoid, then I'm going to go ahead and print off we found a player character who touched the killer block. And I'm going to go ahead and test this in Studio. And there you go. Whenever you touch it, it will detect that whatever part is touching it is part of a character model with a humanoid instance inside of it. Now, so obviously it's not killing you right now. The way we want to kill the character is through this humanoid instance. So if you scroll down and you go to health and you set it to 0, it should kill your character. And that's what we're going to use to kill the character that touches the block. So back in our script, all we have to do is replace this print function output with humanoid.health equals 0. And now whenever a character touches this part, it should kill it just like in any other obby game. So just to recap quickly, we just created a variable pointing to the killer block. We connected to its touched function, and we created a function that just passes in whatever part touches the killer block. We looked at that part's parent model, and we wanted to look for a humanoid instance. And if that humanoid instance exists or is found, then we want to take away that humanoid's health and set it to 0, which just ends up killing the character. And so that's it for the killer block. All you have to do now is scale it however you want, so that they can jump over it however you want them to. They can be spread out, or they can just be pretty wide, so they have to do a long jump, however you want to make it. So next up, we want to be able to save whatever level the character's on. So obviously once they get past a certain level, they want to be able to respawn past that level. They don't want to start over back at the entire beginning of the obby. So the way we're going to do that is using leader stats. And now if you've ever played a game and you've had a leaderboard in the game, you'll probably recognize it. This is what leader stats is. It's a way to display some kind of information that you keep track of to all the players. And here, instead of cache, we can use level. And to code this is pretty easy. We want to go to our server script service in the Explorer tab and create a new script. And now I'm going to bring up the Players API documentation. This is the Players API class that Roblox provides. And if you go to the events, you see player added. And this is what we're going to use to create our leader stats board. So anytime a player is added to the game, players.playerAddedConnect, we can create a new leader stat for that player. And I'll show you how to do that. So just like the documentation shows, you want to reference players. We want to do game : get service players, so we can get the players API. And now we want to connect to the player added event. So we do players player added, and this is an event that fires when a player enters a game. We connect to that and we can create a function, and this player added event will pass in a player, the player whoever enters the game, and we can pass that into our function. So the way we create a leader stats board is all we need to do is create a new folder with the name leader stats. So we can just create a variable. I'll name it leader stats, and I'll do instance new folder, and I'll name it leader stats. And this is what's going to tell Roblox that this is information that needs to be displayed in a game. And all we need to do now is we need to create a new integer value with the name level and put it in this leader stats folder. That way it will be displayed to the game. So all we have to do is create a new variable, local level, do instance new, and we're going to create an integer value or int value. And now I'm going to go ahead and set the value to 1. We also want to name this. We're going to name it level. And now all we need to do is put this in the leader stats folder. So we'll do level.parent equals leader stats. And now we need to put the leader stats folder under the player. So we'll do leader stats parent is the player. And now I should spawn in with a level of 1 in my leaderboard, and I do. So I'm gonna go ahead and name this script. I'm gonna name it player added, so we can easily find this later. And I'm gonna X out of that. So now we want a way to keep track of where the player is in the obby. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a part. And if you've ever played an obby, you know that there's checkpoints throughout the levels, so you know where you are. So whenever you die, you don't restart, obviously. So I'm gonna go ahead and name this checkpoint. And I'll color it green. And I'm gonna go ahead and insert a script. And now coding it will be very similar to the killer block. I'm gonna go ahead and reference the checkpoint, script.parent, and obviously we want to keep track of the player or character whenever it touches a checkpoint. So we'll use that same touch event, checkpoint.touched, and we'll connect to that, and we'll create a function that passes in the part that touches it. And again, we'll do local humanoid equals part dot parent find first child humanoid. And if this humanoid instance exists in the model that the part belongs to, so if humanoid, then we'll go ahead and we will find the player. So back on our players API in the documentation, you can see that there is a method for get player from character. And all we need to do is reference this player's services, or this player's service, and we can pass in our character and it will return the player. So to do this, we can go over to Studio, and let's make sure that we are referencing the player service. So players, game, get service, players. And here we can do, so obviously we found our humanoid, so we know that this part is inside of a character model. So we'll do local character equals part dot parent. And now we can do local player is equal to, we'll use this player's service, and we'll go do get player from character. See, it returns the player whose character matches the given instance. We'll do get player from character and we'll pass in our character. So now we have our player, and if you recall from this script, we have a folder inside of this player named leader stats. So we can go ahead and do local leader stats equals player find first child leader stats. And just for safety, we're going to go ahead and check if leader stats, then, and as you recall, under leader stats, we have a integer value instance named level. So we'll go ahead and do leader stats dot level dot value equals. Now, what do we want to set this value as? It depends what level the player is currently on. So what we actually want to do now is we want to create a new integer value instance inside of this checkpoint. So this is going to be checkpoint 2, and we're going to go ahead and I'm going to rename this value, this integer value, to level, and I'll set the value as 2. So we want to change our player's leader stat value to the level of our checkpoint. Now we can easily do that just by doing script.parent.level.value. And now this should update the player's leader stat level value to 2. And I'm going to go ahead and jump in and test that out. So right now it's 1, and when I touch the part, it becomes 2. And now I can easily do this however many times I want, as long as when I duplicate this, I change the level here to 3. I keep incrementing them whenever I duplicate them. And you can do that as many times as you'd like, and you can have as many levels as you like, as long as you continue to increment this level value here in your checkpoint. So the last thing we want to do is create spawn points. Obviously, whenever you die in a certain level, you want to respawn at the beginning of that level and not at the very beginning of the obby. So what I'll do for that is I'll create a folder under workspace called spawns, and I'll go ahead and insert a part. I'll anchor it. Make sure all your parts are anchored actually if you want them to be anchored. And I'll name it S1 for spawn 1. And I'll just put it like that. And for spawn 2, I'll name it S2. So I'll go ahead and rearrange everything to make it a little more understandable. Obviously, this isn't how an obby normally is set up. Now, what you could do is you could have the spawn block and the checkpoint as the same block, but I'm gonna do it a little different. I'm gonna have them separate just because sometimes whenever you're going through an obby and you've completed a level, but you end up dying before you actually get to the checkpoint, I think that's a little unfair. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set our checkpoint block pretty close to where you actually end up finishing the level. And you can actually even set these as non-collide if you don't want them to stop the player from touching the ground or whatever. And they'll still actually trigger this untouched event here. So, you know, just something to think about. But I'm going to have them different. So right now as mine is set up, you'll spawn here on S1 whenever you enter the game. Once you get to checkpoint 2, you can see that here, checkpoint 2. If you were to die, you would respawn here. And now how we want to script this is actually want to go to our player added script. And here in our player added script, we can actually use an event that Roblox provides called character added. And I'll go ahead and pull that up on the documentation. So I'm here on the player API documentation again. And one of the events that comes with it is character added, which fires when a player's character spawns or respawns. And all we need to do if we scroll down to the documentation is take advantage of this player added event, which we're already doing. And whenever we connect to that, then we can just connect to character added. And I'll show you how to do that. So back on our player added script, now we can connect to the character added event, which is part of player. So we already had the player who just got added to the game. Now we're going to do player.character added. We can connect to this and we can create a function, and this will actually pass in the character for us. So now we have a character added event and we've connected it to this function, which passes in the character. So this is a character of the player that is being added into the game, and now they're spawning or respawning. What we want to do is find out the current level that the player is on. And to do that, all we need to do is declare a variable named level, and we'll do player.leaderstats.level.value. Because as we did earlier, we created a folder named leader stats under the player, and we created an integer value named level inside that folder. So we can easily just do player.leaderstats.level.value, and that will give us the level that the player is currently on. Now we want to find the spawn block that the player needs to be moved to. So if they're on level 2, we want to find S2. So all we need to do is spawn block is equal to game.workspace.spawns, because these spawn blocks are inside the spawns folder. And we'll do find first child S and level. So this will concatenate S and whatever level the player's on, and so it should find S2. Now to move that character to the block, we need to use the pivot to function. So we use character pivot to, and this is expecting a C frame. So we'll do spawn block dot C frame. Now we don't want the character being teleported inside the block, which this is what this will do. We want to teleport it a little bit above the block. So we'll do vector3.new, and we'll give it a Y coordinate of 3 studs. So this will teleport it 3 studs below the C frame of the spawn block. Now, unfortunately, if I were to press play, this would not work because the character added event gets triggered before the character is fully loaded. So to ensure that the character is fully loaded, I'm just going to add a wait function here, and this will ensure that the character is loaded before all this gets executed. And now when I press play, I should spawn in at S1, and I do. And I'm going to go ahead and do this obby. No, I did end up dying, but I did touch that level 2, and now I am on level 2. So now we have all the pieces we need to build an obby. We have blocks that will kill you, we have spawn blocks, and checkpoint blocks. So it's up to you to build the obby however you would like, but you have everything you need, and if you have any questions, please ask in the comments and I will answer them as well as I can.